Now we will move on to item number 8, and this is a little bit interesting one. Before you get going, Bill, I want to chat for a minute about this because there's three actual actions that need to take place in here. If you read in your packet, A, B, and C. C being the public hearing, and so we have to come to a conclusion on A and B before we can make a decision on the public hearing and opening. Because if we don't have those, the public hearing cannot happen. Is that correct, Gary?
Yes, they need to happen in sequence. If you approve the lot division, it will be contingent upon granting the variance from street standards for the Hammerhead turnaround, which, because it requires new right-of-way, you vacate right-of-way to allow it to use for that. So yes, they're all in sequence.
Okay. Bill, you have the podium, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. So as you introduce this topic, there are three specific items. The first is the item that I'll be covering, which is going to cover the lot division itself. And then we have the engineering variance to allow for the Hammerhead turnaround as a public turnaround, and then the vacation hearing that you're now very familiar with, having done two of those. So there are a few moving parts to this one, but we'll try to give you a little bit of history on the property. So this is the property in question that we're talking about. So Orchard Avenue is located here to the east of the property, and Hershey Road is located to the north, and then we have the Highland Drive loop, and then a short stub street called Lande Lane that abuts up to the south of the property. The property itself is located within the R2 zoning district, which is our medium-density, single-family residential zone. So most of the properties to the northwest here and to the south are also zoned R2. We have some farm ranch outdoor recreation just to the north, northwest, and to the west of the property. Some R3 here kind of to the far southeast of the property, and then some suburban residential for the majority of the Christopher Crossing subdivision located to the north, and then some ag forest here distant off to the west. Now, this property was a part of the Christopher Crossing subdivision. So that subdivision included the lots off of Christopher Lane and Hershey, a few lots off here in the south, and this was a portion that was tied to that overall subdivision plat when it was developed back in 2000. It ran into some financial difficulties, and that portion of the plat was never completed. So the public improvements were completed for the rest of the subdivision, but this little portion was not. And it was proposed to be accessed off the end of Lande Lane, and there was going to be a cul-de-sac that would be constructed at the end of Lande, and there were two lots that were platted on that portion of the property. Shortly after that was platted in 2000 and the subdivision was completed, this became a property that was difficult to complete. There are some utility lines and some grade issues that necessitated some retaining walls on the side of the cul-de-sac. And the developer at that time and future developers identified that it really was not financially viable to develop that property given all those constraints. There also are both storm and sanitary sewer lines that need to be extended up Lande from Highland Drive to serve the lots. So there was a lot of development costs, a lot of development challenges that in developing in just a two-lot configuration was not deemed to be financially viable. In addition to the two lots that were platted, there was also a pedestrian easement that was granted. So there is a pedestrian walkway, sidewalk that's been constructed from the street to the north to the northern boundary of this property. And then there was an easement that was granted to allow for that pedestrian easement to cross the property, reach the Lande Lane right-of-way, and continue south towards Highland Drive. After that was determined to be not feasible for development in its current configuration in 2007, the city was approached with a proposed lot division proposal that would take the two lots and convert them into three. That proposal modified that cul-de-sac to extend the roadway farther north into the property to get away from the utility lines and grade issues and place the cul-de-sac in a little bit of a modified configuration located farther north into the property. There were two flagpole lots then that were going to gain access at the northern end of that cul-de-sac, and then a third lot that would be located a little bit farther to the south. And so these were proposed to be the three building lots in that configuration. There was also a remnant parcel here located on the east side of the proposed cul-de-sac, and the discussion at that time was that that was likely going to be sold to adjacent property owners located to the east of the proposed cul-de-sac. So that was approved by the council in 2007. There were a number of conditions. One included rerouting that pedestrian easement to allow for the continued route for connectivity to that sidewalk to continue down to Lande Lane. But that was approved in 2007 and then really has sat since that time. So this was the configuration that resulted from that lot division. These were the 3 lots that were approved. This was that remnant parcel. There was a pedestrian easement that was granted here along the northerly property line to provide a pedestrian route to the proposed new right-of-way. There was new right-of-way that was dedicated beyond just the prior cul-de-sac to allow for that cul-de-sac construction. And then there was a small vacation on the side of that cul-de-sac that previously was platted in the Christopher's Crossing subdivision. So that was kind of how it stands right now from the last approval. So legally, we have essentially all of this property in private ownership, this in private ownership, and this right-of-way exists, and this pedestrian easement exists today. The proposal before you this evening is to modify that again, to reconfigure it into 4 building lots with a alternate hammerhead turnaround. And that is something that the current owner of the property feels is going to fit the site and make it much more economically viable to develop the property. There would be 4 individual building lots that would be a little bit more regular in shape, not quite the flagpoles that existed previously. And then this remnant portion that was located on the east side of the prior cul-de-sac, the request is to vacate right-of-way. That would be added to this property, and that would then be a resulting building lot. So just to look at it a little bit more closely, there are 4 building parcels that are proposed. They range from about a little over 8,000 square feet in size to about 13,700 square feet in size. So they're all well within the required 7,000 square foot minimum lot size. And then this plus area here is the proposed right-of-way dedication to accommodate the hammerhead turnaround. So as I noted before, there was a previous pedestrian easement that would extend and connect to the then dedicated right-of-way to provide that pedestrian route. The proposal before you this evening would include the dedication of a new pedestrian easement that would continue along in that east-west direction, then head south to tie into the proposed public right-of-way dedication, shown there in red. The area in the tan shading is then the area that is going to be requested for vacation, that would be added to the remnant parcel to create the 4th building lot. And again, the 3 lots then that would exist on the west side of the property. As I mentioned, this is zoned R2. This is the single-family zoning district. The minimum lot width is 60 feet. The minimum lot area is 7,000 square feet. 4 flagpole lots, and the 2 westernmost parcels are flagpoles. They are required to abut the public street right-of-way for a minimum distance of 20 feet, and they have a maximum length of 150 feet in length. All the proposed lots in this configuration before this evening meet all the minimum requirements as specified in the zoning code. This request was reviewed by the Public Works Finance Committee at their February 12th meeting, at which time the committee made a recommendation for approval of the lot division itself. The other items are before the full council for their consideration. Staff's recommendation this evening is to approve the lot division request with 4 specific conditions. The first is the vacation of the right-of-way and the engineering variance are approved by the City Council. Without those, this doesn't function, this does not work. The second is the applicant dedicates the additional right-of-way necessary for that proposed hammerhead turnaround configuration. There is some right-of-way that needs to be dedicated to the west of the existing right-of-way dedication to make that occur and to provide for that public turnaround. 3, that the applicant grants that additional pedestrian, 15-foot wide pedestrian easement between lots 3 and 4 to allow for that continuation of the existing easement south to the new proposed right-of-way boundary. And the 4th, which is that all public improvements are constructed, including the pedestrian walk through the easement, or the developer enters into a development agreement with security posted to secure those improvements prior to any building permits being issued upon the subject property. So with that ends my presentation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Kind of a fun thing about that, I remember in 2000 when I was on planning and zoning for the first time, and we heard this, and people have been trying to make this thing work for almost 2 decades that I know of, because I was on council in 2007 at that time, Bill. But I'll turn over to council here. What do you want, your questions for Bill?
I have a question.
Kathy?
Can you pull the,
I can.
yeah, the picture, or that,
This one?
well, so did the landowners, when it was in the configuration of the 3 lots, did the landowners to the east ever express interest in wanting to purchase?
I don't recall if they were present at the meetings back in 2007 at that time. I think the applicant may have represented that they'd had conversations with them, and they were discussing a deal to have them purchase that additional property.
But it never went anywhere.
To my knowledge, they still own that property there to the east.
Okay, thanks.